Musical Theater, an informal television workshop in a series of programs relating the American musical theater to the whole panorama of American life, integrating the history, the culture, and the music of the American people. With Howard Smith and the CBS Orchestra. Guests, Burgess Meredith and Don Elliott. And with students from the New York City High School. And the host for the workshop, Jim Morske.
Begun with music like that in a long time. Did you recognize it? Yes, Jeff.
Gershwin's Fascinating Rhythm.
Right from his Lady Be Good of 1924, the musical. And speaking of musicals, you know, our musical theater really didn't become the American musical theater until jazz was introduced to it. Because jazz gave American music its distinctly national flavor. And it was George Gershwin who introduced the rhythms and the melodies and the harmonies to the musical theater. Now, a show tune like Fascinating Rhythm is not in itself jazz. A show tune becomes jazz when a musician improvises on it, embellishes it, and so forth. And it's this real jazz that we're going to be talking about today. Now, let me say one thing first. This whole picture of jazz is a very confusing one, because if you read the books and talk to the jazz musicians, you'll find there are as many definitions for jazz as there are schools of jazz and styles of jazz. Will you name some styles of jazz for me? Yes.
Dixieland,
all right.
blues.
Dixieland.
Progressive.
Progressive.
Swing.
Swing. Yes.
Modern.
Modern. All right.
Bebop.
Bebop. Well, you can put the Dixieland, the New Orleans in the hot jazz category. Swing is in a category by itself, and you have bebop, cool, progressive under modern jazz. Now, even to the beginner, there are some things that are quite clear about jazz. We know that it all began way back before the turn of the century in and around New Orleans. And that jazz grew out of different kinds of music, like the blues, the most durable form of jazz. Now, that's the base of jazz. You know, it has that plaintive quality to it. Now, all the schools of jazz, no matter what they are, all use the same basic elements and develop those basic elements. They all improvise, they have a beat, and they use various instruments to give it the tone color to music. Now, it's when they use these basic elements in different ways that we get a style of jazz, like, for instance, Dixieland. Fellas. Now, let's jump from Dixieland to the 1930s, when you had the era of the big bands, when swing was this thing. But the big bands didn't improvise as the small groups did, because the big bands used arranged music, music that was written down. And this was the era when the individual players became stars, like Benny Goodman, Duke Ellington, Tommy Dorsey, Artie Shaw, and so forth. And one of the favorite tunes for the big bands in that era was a song called I Found a New Baby. the Paramount Theater and jitterbugging in the aisles. Oh, me. Well, of course, after World War II, modern jazz was developed. In modern jazz, we had bebop, cool jazz, and progressive jazz. Howard, do you have an example of the bebop style of jazz for us?
Well, I have a little thing of Dizzy Gillespie's, and I think he's about the best-known exponent of the idiom, shall we say. A little thing called Things to Come.
Let's hear it. They can do anything. Classical music, show tunes, styles of jazz, they're really great. Well, another thing that modern jazz did, or a couple of things, was first they introduced new instruments to jazz, like the oboe, the French horn, and so forth. And they also accented the small groups. And one of the outstanding figures in jazz today was a man who has played with small jazz group. He has conducted his own small jazz group, and he also wrote the score, the jazz score for the Broadway show Thurber Carnival. And I'd like you to meet Don Elliott. Don, come in here.
Here's our workshop.
I do. You were having a lot of fun there with Fascinating Rhythm.
I'm telling you, swinging band.
Now, how many instruments do you play?
Well, the mellophone, which this is the mellophone, and the vibraphone. The No, I'm sorry.
Is this kind of a cousin to the French horn?
In a way, it sounds and looks somewhat like a French horn, Jim, but this mellophone actually should be played this way, you see. And when I record or play for people, it's strange for me to play this way. In order to get to the people, I have to, pardon my back. So I had it come out like that.
You want the sound to hit right at them.
That's right.
Now, will you do a thing for me now, you and the men of the sextet, the American Musical Theater Sextet, by the way. Now, Don, before I was talking about the three basic elements of jazz, the beat, improvisation, and the tone colors. Oh, listen, in rehearsal the other day, Don Abney gave me three new basic elements in jazz. Don, what were they?
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Amen.
Isn't that great? Perfect, Don. Marvelous. All right, now, would you and your men demonstrate the three basic elements, and then from that go off into the various styles of modern jazz?
All right, sure, Jim. We'll start off, see what we'll like to do is establish, first of all, the beat. Specs Powell.
All right, introduce your men
I
as we
will,
go around.
sure. Specs Powell is on drums. Yeah. And then Trigger Alpert on bass will pick it up with the beat. Musical beat. And now Chuck Wayne on guitar will fill in. Yeah, I want to get up there.
We got them all.
Don Abney
Don Abney at the piano.
will add on piano. Now, they're all free moving. Now, everybody's just going off on their own.
Who's this lone man?
This fellow's Hal McCusick, Jim. Go ahead, Hal. Yeah, they're all having fun.
Now, we're going to make blend these into tone colors first, right?
That's right, a written score or a written arrangement, establishing the tone color, the harmonic structure of how a piece should be played. We'll take the Thurber Carnival, the Act 1 opener of the Thurber Carnival,
All right.
and we'll use that as our example, showing you how Benny Goodman, George Shearing, Gerry Mulligan, myself would play the Thurber Carnival.
All right, now
See?
don't forget the improvisation, too. And you call everything
I'll
out
let
to
you-
us so we know exactly what you're doing.
I'll let you know when we improvise. There we go. And a 1, 2, a 1. Improvise. Go, Chuck. Don Abbey. Yeah, here we go. That is the swing era, Benny Goodman's swing era. And now we go to the George Shearing era, which is more of a cool type, as you probably know. There's no motor on the vibraphone, and the front line consists of vibraphone, piano, and guitar. And Chuck and I were with Shearing together a long time ago, and really. So here we go with the Shearing sound. A 1, 2, oh. Shearing block chord style. Yeah. Thanks, Al. Next comes the Gerry Mulligan era. Very driving beat. A little slower here. And as Hal mentioned before, the horns have a conversation between themselves. Hi. You see, it's that kind of a thing. And here's the same Thurber Carnival theme done with the Mulligan style. Trumpet, baritone sax, bass, and drums.
West Coast style.
West Coast, cool, right. 1, 2, 3, once more.
worked out.
Last, but I hope not least, is my idea of the Thurber Carnival. And this is where I incorporate the use of a voice. I hope. Using the voice in a three-way. The bass clarinet is on the bottom, and the voice is here, and Chuck on guitar will be here. 3 waves. A little. Let's see. Here we go. 1, 2. Where's your A? All right. There you go. 1, 2. Good. Do-we-dip-a-dip. Do-we-do, do-we-dip-a-dip. Do-we-do, do-we-dip-a-dip. The CBS, do-we-dip-a-dip. Do-we-do, do-do-do-do. You-do-ba-do-ba-do. Do-do again. You-ba-do-ba-do. Do-we-do, do-we-dip-a-dip. Do-we-do, do-we-dip-a-dip. Do-we-da, do-we-dip-a-dip. Do-we-do, do-do-do-do. Shoo-ba-doo-ba-doo, shoo-ba-doo-ba-doo. Do-we-do-ba-dip, do-we-dip. Shoo-do-do-do-do. Shoo-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Shoo-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Shoo-do-do-do. Sarah. Shoo-do-do-do. Shoo-do-do-do. Mr. McGo.
Yo-ba-do-do-wee. Yo-bo-dee-ba-do.
Shoo-do-do-do-do-do. Here we go. Shoo-do-do-do.
That last, of course, was an example of scat singing using nonsensical words and sounds. Now, Don was the man who composed the jazz score for Thurber Carnival. But the man whose idea it was to use jazz in Thurber Carnival is our next guest, and he is the distinguished actor-director Burgess Meredith. Very good indeed. It's awfully nice to have you with us today.
Thank you.
I think the first thing you'd better do is perhaps describe what Thurber Carnival is.
Well, Thurber Carnival is a review of, but without dancing and without singing. It's a series of very funny and hilarious sketches written by James Thurber, the great humorist.
How did you get the idea to incorporate modern jazz into the...
Well, I don't know. You know, we sit around. I wanted something to kind of be troubadour to this whole thing. I thought of it as a kind of a troubadour evening, you know, where the music, they tell the story and so forth. And, by the way, this is a kind of an interesting thing that this is the first time that the locals have allowed as few as 4 people to be, 4 musicians, you know, in a show. And the idea was we went to them and said, this is not a pit orchestra, this is part of the show. So they're never off the stage, they're always in sight, they're part of the whole action itself, and it started a whole new trend. There'll be about 3 or 4 shows doing the same thing.
Is that right?
You can figure that if they could do that, why, it would be a whole new trend.
Well, we're going to look forward to that. Now, did you have an interest in jazz going way back to your early youth?
Yes, and my brother was a kind of a clown drummer. And he's passed on now, but he was with the Benson Orchestra of Chicago and a lot of the Whiteman and so on.
Now, you really began your career in the theater back in the days of the Civic Repertory Theater on 14th Street.
That's right. Now, it's all gone now. They're playing the Connection down there.
Well, that was the days you were playing. Now, is it Peter or Paul in Romeo and Juliet?
Peter.
Peter and the Dormouse and Tweedledee and Alice in Wonderland?
That's right. That began it all. I don't know what it had to do with jazz, but there I was.
You know, speaking of your name, Buzz.
Yeah.
Now, does this come from a character
Burgess.
you played in...
Comes from Burgess, I think, kind of a contraction. And then I did play, they called a character that I played, almost first one I played on Broadway, Buzz. Kind of stuck with me.
How long has it been since you saw Don Elliott last?
About 20 minutes.
Well, come on and renew your acquaintanceship, Don.
How are you?
Okay,
We always
boss.
shake hands. I thought this was on radio. That's why I didn't. I apologize.
Oh, you're wonderful.
Anyway,
Well,
how are you?
when you got your idea, Buzz, to use jazz at Thurber Carnival, was Don the first man you called?
Yes. See, this is why I brought this record. This is a record that I first heard him on, that he made with Paul Desmond, you know, who generally plays with Brubeck, and they made this, and I love the sound that this thing. I suppose it's out of print now, this thing.
Just about, Buzz.
Yeah.
We should make a new one.
Make a new one. Make another one with Paul. And so, of course, Paul was, I tried to get the two of them, but Paul was tied up with Brubeck, so I got a hold of Don, and he was just sitting there waiting, and that's the rest is history.
Well, how do you go about telling a jazz musician exactly the kind of music you want incorporated into a straight
You don't
play?
tell him nothing.
Is that the idea?
He just came to rehearsals, and he says he dug it, and he went home and came back with it. That's all.
How long did it take you to do this material with
4
Thurber, Don?
minutes.
No, actually, Jim, we were writing on the road too. I'd say about about 5 or 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, were there revisions and the writing of more music? Did you always have enough? Was it always the right
sometimes.
music the first time?
Well, he never got very... whatever changes were made were his objection to him, never anyone's else. You know, he was pretty particular what he wanted.
Once in a while.
But from the first day, he seemed to, the first day that he cared to play anything, it always seemed right to me.
Well, you know, we're always talking about improvisation in jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're using jazz in Thurber Carnival. Does he always play the same music every night?
No, but he has to be pretty precise about the number of bars.
Yeah.
But what he does in those bars, it's his own business. But it's never very far off.
No, thanks, Bud.
Or how do you enjoy playing in a play on Broadway?
It's a great feeling, Jim. It really is.
Do you have as much freedom as playing in a club date and so forth?
Oh, yes, we do. As Buzz mentioned, we have to play the melody first, and then when it comes to the improvisation that you mentioned before in the show, why, we're on our own, provided we play the proper number of bars, whatever we
He's
feel
hooked
like.
a lot of people with that mellophone.
Yeah.
Too. It makes a big hit in the
I'll
show.
bet they gather around you, I guess, during intermission and ask you all about it, don't
Well, Buzz renamed it the Thurber horn.
they? That's marvelous.
Yeah.
Well, Buzz, what is on your schedule in the future now?
Oh, a few plays. Trying to get another one with some jazz in it. Nothing to be announced yet, but I'm going to do a couple of shows this fall and act in one later on. Do a one-man show. I'm going to do some.
Well, we're going to be looking forward to that, and it's a great pleasure having you with us today.
All right.
I hope you come back and join us again.
I will.
And perhaps the two of you can do other things in the theater,
Yeah,
too.
we'll dance.
All right. Well, no, don't go away. No, we want Don to play a little more music from Thurber Carnival. You do that for us
We
now?
can do the actual Thurber Carnival arrangement, the actual arrangement as the people hear and see in the theater.
No taking off.
No, no, sir.
All right, cool. Well, the key word in jazz today, both in and out of the American musical theater, seems to be experimentation. But one thing is certain, this dynamic, exciting, driving music, this jazz, is uniquely an American contribution to the world of music. And Howard, what shall we go out with?
The American Musical Theater is produced by WCBS-TV in cooperation with the Board of Education of the City of New York. Today's program featured Howard Smith and the CBS Orchestra. Guests Burgess Meredith and Don Elliott. And the host for the workshop, Jim Morske. The students participating on today's program are from the high schools of the City of New York. Research material courtesy of the Jazz Makers, edited by Shapiro and Hentoff, published by Reinhardt. History of Jazz in America by Barry Ulanov, published by Viking Press. And The Heart of Jazz by Grossman and Farrell, published by the New York University Press.